But I'm gonna let Coach Gillespie come up and talk. He's got about 15-20 minutes. He's got more than enough to say. He might be the only person I know that is in a Hall of Fame, so he has won over 1,100 games at the Division I collegiate level. He's taken two teams to Omaha, two different teams to Omaha. He's been there plenty of times. He's won a national championship. So I'm going to let him say what he needs to say, and you guys soak it in, and we'll go from there.
Awesome.
Cool.
All right.
Coach Gillespie.
Chris, thanks. Fellas, thanks for getting up and doing this. I'm pretty sure you guys do this as a labor of love. I'm sure none of you are getting paid to do this. And the kids are lucky that you do this. When this was developing, Chris suggested that perhaps we could make a few comments about the kinds of qualities and traits that have been important in terms of the players that we've dealt with, and I think it's a great topic. I think it's a very, very important topic. I'm not at all sure that I have anything revolutionary to say about it, because I kind of think that the things that I would say and will say are things that you're already saying with your own kids and your own families, and of course these kids that you're coaching, working with, and teaching. And I think they're probably the same qualities that have served you well, personally, in your own lives, in your own businesses, and in your own profession. Because I really don't think there's anything revolutionary about the traits and qualities that lead to success in a person's life. I wish that I did not have to hit and run and get out of here. I'd like to stay and hear what these other guys have to say. I would say this: Jason Brown has to leave to get to the USC alumni game. It'll be his close to 30th straight alumni game where he'll catch 9 innings, and so. But don't let him out of here until you get him to talk about everything about what his path has been. Because on this matter, on this topic of qualities, he is on the shortest list of the best examples of anybody I've ever known. We all love to win. Matter of fact, I can say this: you need to win at some levels. Trust me on that. And we like great players. Right? I mean, you do too. We all like really, really good players. And in my experience of working with really good players, you feel blessed if among those really good players, if they have these same qualities. And they don't all. Some are just gifted and blessed, and there's some shortcomings when it comes to the kinds of things that maybe we'll get a minute to get to in a minute here. But to the point, as I look back over all these years, the people that I remember with the greatest fondness are the guys that have gone about it the right way. Well, what's the right way? We all, the term work ethic is an overused term, but it's an appropriate term. It's an accurate term. And it's not just about work. It's about all the other kinds of things that fit into the cliches, but again, I think are appropriate. The good teammate, the unselfish player, the guy that has a feel for the game, the guy that has a real awareness of the game. Andy Nieto and I worked together for 10 years as coaches, and these were among the qualities that he had and has in spades: a real feel for the game, a real knowledge of the game, a quickness to be able to make decisions during a game as a player, and then, of course, the things that he's trying to advance with his own teams, his own players. Those are the people that I remember the best. Well, I think And that is what Jason Brown is. I would tell you that. He came to us in the earlier part of the 90s and was with us for 4 years, and he's been in pro baseball ever since, and has grinded through the business of baseball to arrive at a really great place, and he's not done yet. He's young and he's not done yet. I hope I'm around long enough to see how his career continues. Well, these qualities are what I hope he will come out of his humility shell and share with you, because they are the things that I think we all agree are the things that are most important. And I would repeat that I think this is probably you. But I really think that whatever your life has been, and I don't know you, but I surmise that as you have arrived in your own careers, in your own professions, and perhaps those of you that are married, perhaps your wives as well, in their own careers, because these qualities of not only intelligence, but perhaps more importantly, drive and motivation and determination, and don't get discouraged when you hit a glitch in the road, because it happens to all of us, doesn't it? I mean, again, whatever your professions are, I just can't believe it's been the yellow brick road for everybody all the way. And that's, in our case, as it relates directly to baseball, the things that I ask myself as our year goes along, in any year, and certainly game by game by game, but practice by practice by practice, because we can't just dial it up in game time. I always ask, are our players trying to do things the way we have asked them to do them, or taught them to do them, or drilled them to do them, or trained them to do them? Is that translating? Is that what's showing up in a game? Can I make the determination that in fact the players are trying, that they have paid attention, they have practiced to get it right, which is much about repetition. And when we talk about repetition, it's not just about repetition, it's about repetition the right way. Well, we might have differences on how to teach the sacrifice bunt, for example. We have a belief, okay, so we're going to teach it and drill it, and I want to see at game time, when the pressure's on in the 8th inning, and it's important, and it's a one-run game, and we've got to get a bunt down, that whoever it is that's up there is doing it the way we've attempted to do it. Doesn't always work, and I get that. We all have to get that. But I believe that we got a better chance to get it down if we are doing it the way we've worked to do it. Well, then the next question is, have we done it enough? I mean, we got to ask that question. If we don't execute something in a game, and I'm fair about it, and I'm usually not, but if I'm fair about it and I'm honest about it, I have to ask, geez, have we really done that? I mean, have we really done that enough? It's not like, well, we just worked on first and third defense yesterday. Well, okay, great. How about 2 days before that, and 6 days before that, and have we done it enough that we'd have a reasonable expectation that we could handle that situation when it comes up in a game? And sometimes, unfortunately, the answer is no, and we really can't lay that off on the player. That's on us. So that's the number one thing. Are we trying to do it the way that we have taught to do it and worked to do it? And the other thing is, are we competing every pitch? Okay, you'd think that's a given, but it turns out that it's not always a given. Not everybody competes at the same level. But again, see, I think this is. I mean, it would be interesting to me to hear from you. I wish I could spend some time with you individually or as a group to find out if that doesn't apply in your own worlds, in your own way, whatever your path has been as you went through school, as your experiences occurred, as you've gotten into your lives and your careers and your professions. doesn't competition with yourself show up in terms of becoming the best that you can be at whatever it is that you do? And I surmise that that's probably among the lessons that you're trying to leave with your own kids and the kids that you're working with these teams. I don't have to tell you guys, you're in this business, and I only know what I hear, sometimes see. Youth coaches get a bad rap, and there's a bad reputation of the way youth coaches work with kids. I would tell you this, that if they get a bad rap, so do we. Because if there's jerks among the groups that you guys play with and against, well, it's the same way at our level. So by no means are the coaches that coach at our level not in the same basket when it comes to how we treat people. But I presume that among the things that are most important to you, I think you probably are trying to organize your practices, and you're trying to present a day that enables your players to work on the skills and the fundamentals and the parts of the game that are going to help them get better, and you understand that there's not going to be much difference between today and tomorrow. It's going to be between today and a month from today. I did this Little League thing one year, okay? I'm one of those smart guys that's had 2 wives, not at the same time. But and my first wife lined me up with a group of 7-year-olds, and it was in the divorce papers. I just got to tell you, I mean, it's part of the reason why it didn't work. But I'm telling you that from day one to day last, there was a big difference in how those guys could play. And they were the bad news bears. We were the bad news bears. But at the end of the time, at the end of the 3 months, they got better. Well, that's about repetition, right? It's about trying to do it the right way. It's about kids buying in. But I think that probably you're trying to do that. You're trying to help them get better. And I think you're trying to make it fun. And I commend you for that, because I think your patience can be tried to the absolute max. I have no doubt about that. I would say this. I'm not on, this is not what I was asked here to come and speak about, but I can't help but saying it myself. I'm not on year-round baseball. Now I get it, I understand that kids want to get the best that they can best, in this case in the sport of baseball. We see it in basketball, we see it in many sports. It's one sport and one sport only, and with a goal to become the best that they can possibly be at that one sport. And I think that's sad, because I think the participation in other sports and activities is good for the kid. I really do. One of the things I can't explain with any scientific expertise is the number of injuries that we have in baseball now. And I'm not so sure it's not about year-round play. I'm not so sure that participation in football or basketball or soccer or lacrosse has hit the West Coast in the last few years, and maybe some of your kids are playing that. I think that's all a good thing. I really do. I think they miss out on fun if they're not doing some of those things. Amen to that. I'm done with that comment. Because I know Jason so well, I know Andy so well, I know that those guys were both multiple sport athletes as kids when they were growing up. And I knew about Jason Brown before he ever came to us as a college player, because I knew his coaches at the high school where he played. And he wouldn't tell you this, but it's got little to do with some of the things we've talked about here. But the high school that he went to, it was a high school called Mirrorless High School, closed its doors. This is on the Palos Verdes Peninsula, enrollment down. Both Mirrorless High School and Palos Verdes High School closed down, and everybody went to the same high school, which had been called Rolling Hills High School, now is known as Peninsula High School. Well, at Mirrorless High School, he was a quarterback, and a good one. Now, he goes to the new high school. He's still a football player, but it occurred during the summer prior to the time that he would start school. That football program sort of had their quarterback in place, and he became both an offensive and a defensive lineman. So this is a guy that went from quarterback to an offensive and defensive lineman, was an all-league player in both those on both sides of the ball. And the reason I say this to you is because this goes to this business of traits. It goes to the business of qualities. It goes to the business of teammating. It goes to the business of unselfishness. He would not have any reason in his time that he'll spend with you today to get into that specifically, but I mention it to you because I know this about him, and I know this as part of what his makeup is. Makeup is a term that we all use. We really try to ascertain makeup before we get involved with the kid, but I find that in our case, we really do not ever know what we have in a kid until we get him with us and get him with us day after day after day for quite a long period of time to find out what his makeup is, what kind of kid, what kind of person he is. And that's what the case was with this guy. And so I would urge you again to don't let him out the door. He wants to get to SC. Can I just say this? Don't let him go there. He takes keep him here all day. Take him to your house, let him get your kid. And I got to get out of here, but I have to tell you this. These guys have already heard this story about 8 times, but when I get a chance to speak in front of a group, as I said at the outset, I wasn't at all certain that I would have anything to say that you'd really be able to take with you. But I knew this: I'd be able to leave you with one story that is a can't miss great story, because it's sort of a baseball story. It's a story we get into every year because we get going on offensive signs. When I go in today, we're going to have to review offensive signs. And it reminds me of this story of the Orange County Transit bus pulling up to the stop sign. I beg your pardon, the bus stop right there on California Street on the Irvine campus. I'm sure you guys all know that. And pulls up to the curb, doors open, lady standing there at the curb, goes up the steps, get next to the bus driver. And he looks at her, and she looks back, and she goes like this. Which reminds me of offensive signs, right? We all have this sign somewhere in our repertoire. And the bus driver looks back at her, and he goes like this, and he goes like this. And she got a little reaction. She's not at all thrilled with that. And so she then goes back at him, and she does this. And he goes like this, and then he goes like this. And she's pretty unhappy with that. Looks back at him, and she goes like this. And he goes like this again, and then he goes like this. And with that, she turns around, she bolts off the bus, goes back on the sidewalk the other way, and she's gone. With that, a woman that's about 2/3 way on the bus, sitting on an aisle in the back of the bus, bolts out of her chair, hustles down the aisle, gets up right next to that bus driver, and gets in his face. And she starts airing him out. She says, "Hey, I saw what you did. I saw how rude you were. I saw how lewd you were. And I'm going to do everything I can to find out your supervisor at the Orange County Transit. I'm going to do everything I can to get you fired. I want you to know that." And she says, "Hey, lady, calm down." He says, "I've been driving this route for 28 years. And I've never been rude, and I've never been lewd to anybody." He said, "What you don't know about that lady is that she's a deaf mute, and she was speaking to me in sign. And when she came on the bus, she wanted to know if this bus goes uptown. I had to tell her, no, this bus goes downtown. And she didn't like that, but then she wanted to know, do we make stops along the way? And I had to tell her, no. This is the express, we go right straight through it. And she didn't like that, and then she wanted to know, do we go by the dairy farm? And I had to tell her, no, we go by the ballpark. And with that, she got off the bus, said, "Oh crap." You're not welcome only at Cal State Fullerton. Come see us.